September 2021, the end of the week, but a lot of stories to discuss. The first of which is going to be rising extremism in India, ladies and gentlemen. We've been talking about it in the past as well, but more and more proofs come to light as far as the different kinds of extremism that India is perpetrating, especially towards minorities in India. The latest incident comes from Assam, where in the name of eviction, people are being killed by the Hindu extremists and the Indian forces in Assam. A video surfaced on social media in which a journalist was seen pouncing on the body of one of those protesters. In the name of eviction, the minorities, especially the Muslim community across India, is being subjected to gruesome torture. This is going to be our first segment of the day. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, will concern the future of the relationship between Pakistan and the United States of America. As we know that Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab is in New York. He has met with Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, and has talked about the different fora of cooperation between the two countries. We will of course talk about that in context of the past comments of Anthony Blinken, as well as Pakistan's desire to forge a closer cooperation with the United States of America. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about Pakistan again in our third story, who on Thursday urged the OIC, that is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, to enhance its efforts to facilitate a lasting, solution to the Kashmir dispute. What is happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is nothing new. It has been more than 7 decades that it has been going on. Despite that, despite so many resolutions of the United Nations, nothing concrete has really come out. In fact, quite the opposite is happening. Now that Narendra Modi is in the United States of America, it's pertinent that the United Nations exerts pressure as far as the barbarities that are being perpetrated by India on Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. And our last story, ladies and gentlemen, is a very sad one. Talat Iqbal, a renowned actor from the 70s and from the 80s, has passed away in the United States of America. It was confirmed by his family as well. He had been on ventilator for some time due to a prolonged illness, and now he has unfortunately met his mentor. Our condolences to the entire family and of course to the entire fraternity of television and entertainment, of which Mr. Talat was a huge part of during the 1970s and the 1980s. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the rising extremism in India. What is happening as far as Muslims are concerned? The latest incident that has surfaced is that in Assam. More in the following report.
The BJP-sponsored jingoistic nationalism has rendered India's world's most horrendous place for minorities, poor, low-caste Hindus, and other marginalized segments. The bloodthirsty hate is taking the toll of countless innocent souls under the brazen watch of saffron terrorist Indian government. Underscoring the dangerous contours of self-styled democracy, heart-wrenching videos of cruel police drive against civilians in India jolted the humanitarian edifice of international law. Perpetrating crimes against humanity, Assam police is directly firing on civilians, mercilessly killing 2 and injuring dozens in a botched eviction drive against poor inhabitants of the alleged governmental land. Emboldened by state-sponsored barbaric acts, a government cameraman desecrating a body at behest of the Indian police can be seen in the horrific video. At the end of the video, policemen can be seen hugging the photographer. Adding insult to the injury, Indian government and police department is unabashedly defending this ruthless operation against civilians. According to the myriad reports by the United Nations and Human Rights Watch, violence, hatred, and intolerance based on religious extremism are on the rise in India. Violence against Muslims and Dalits has increased over the past 5 years under Modi's rule. Muslims, Dalits, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, poor, and all other marginalized segments are facing testing times in India. They're being attacked and killed by the organized mobs. They're living in an atmosphere of hate and fear. The Hindutva doctrine of BJP is most ugly scar on the democratic credentials of India, rendering the country into autocratic despotism.
Now to talk more about this heinous incident, evidence of which has surfaced on videos on social media from Assam. We've been joined by Lt.Gen Raza Muhammad Khan Saab, who's a senior analyst. Sir, thank you very much to have joined us again. Sir, India doesn't let any any incident go by in which or through which it can perpetrate these barbarities on the different minority segments in its country, and it goes unabated. In fact, journalists are now part and parcel of it, as we've seen this person Bijoy Bania, who has been arrested yesterday, was part of it, and the videos that surfaced showed him as well. These barbarities, isn't this kind of circulating more and more, getting part of and becoming part of the Indian society?
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Absolutely. I think whatever is happening in India is most unfortunate. It is not in the interest of Indian democracy. It is a very clear conflation, of where the religion followed by all minorities with terrorists. We know that in India, citizens are arrested for comments on, whatever is happening in the world, including what is happening in Afghanistan. We are also aware that, very recently an anti-terror center has been established in Deoband because there the chief ministers had declared that Deoband is now, a terror hub. In addition to that, we recall the Tablighi Jamaat. It was blamed for spreading corona, while the Kumbh Mela, was, I think, 100 times bigger than that, but nothing happened. When it comes to Assam, we know that there are a very large number of separatist movements there, and the main reason for that is that the treatment that is meted out to the people by India. We are aware, that Assam is one of the very large states, and there it comprises 35 million people, out of which 35% are Muslims. There in the recent incidents, their mosques and madaris have been demolished, and they've been declared as illegal immigrants from Bangladesh, although they are all Indian citizens. And while the Indian media is talking of only 5,000 Muslims, independent reports have clarified that there are more than 20 to 30,000 families which have been displaced from there. And therefore, I think the international community needs to take a serious note of this.
But Raza Khan Sahab, you say that the international community needs to take serious notice of this. If it's not even taking serious notice of what is happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, do you really feel that they are wanting, or there's any will from their end to do something as far as these atrocities on the Muslims in India is concerned?
I think they have to take notice of that, and I will take you back to President Biden's address to the UN General Assembly. He talked of, protection of the human rights of everyone in the world, and he talked of the Palestinians, and he talked of even the people of Afghanistan. But very conveniently, he ignored, whatever is happening to the Muslims and to the minorities in India, and particularly to the people of Kashmir, which means that there is some kind of hypocrisy there. If you recall, President Joe Biden in his election manifesto had laid great emphasis on the human rights everywhere in the world. And even in his inaugural address, he had made a mention that he can feel the pain of the people, whose rights are violated. But then, when it comes to their policies, it is very saddening to note that these are violated. But I think a very bigger responsibility lies on the shoulders of the OIC. As far as the rights of the Muslims, Indian Muslims is concerned, the OIC claims, to be the representative of 2 billion Muslims. It is a combined GDP of $21 trillion, and it has more than 3/4 of the world reserve. It has tremendous influence on India, and if it wants, it can really apply economic pressure, political pressure, diplomatic pressure on India to stop these barbarities against Muslims and the Kashmiris. So Pakistan is doing whatever it can. but
Sir,
it is not
Pakistan is doing
enough.
whatever it can. You very rightly said that it is the responsibility of the OIC, but any organization, whether it be the OIC or the United Nations or any other important organization, needs to translate words and those documents that it takes out into action. Some kind of pressure tactic needs to be put on to India, because as we see this attitude, this aggressive, violent attitude that we saw only first of all in the forces in India has now slowly and steadily crept into other segments of the society. Example of which we've seen in this journalist who has been seen in the video in Assam pouncing on the body of this Muslim. Don't you feel that the Indian society in general is becoming more and more aggressive and violent towards the minorities thanks to this attitude by the BJP government?
Absolutely. I think it is very shameful that this is happening in India, although the Indian opposition leaders have been talking about that, but their voices are very shrill. It is the Indian society as such, it is the Indian media as such which needs to wake up and, control the situation there. Otherwise, when they're talking of the biggest democracy in the world, it's all false. I think India is now the biggest theocracy of the world. And I think the world should take a note of this. We must know that, Islamophobia is now mainstream in India. Muslims are openly being told either to go to Pakistan, to go back to Bangladesh, and now, after, the takeover of the Taliban, they are being told even to go to Afghanistan. I think this is very, very sad. This is a clear violation of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I'd like to just quote from that, which I hope the Indian leadership can listen to. And it says, whereas it is essential if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. Unfortunately, this is not happening. And they are actually pushing all their minorities, whether they are Muslims or Dalits or Sikhs or Christians, to rise against this fascist government in rebellion. And the UN Declaration of Human Rights, it gives them that legitimacy. And we are aware, that according to the Western media, India is now the world leader in internet shutdowns. And they have very clearly declared that Muslims are not equal citizens of India. They are actually applying the same formula to other minorities as well. And they've been saying clearly, their leadership, that Musalman ka ek hi stan, Pakistan ya Kabristan. So I think how else can the OIC, or particularly, the influential Muslim countries of the world, not take notice of this if the West does not do that.
Raza Khan Sahab, also there are some internal voices, some sane voices that are coming out, especially from the opposition. We've read and heard what Rahul Gandhi Sahab had to say. He said that the Assam state was on state-sponsored fire. Now, do you feel words like these, statements such as these, have any bearing or whatsoever on the politics of India that continues on a very violent rampage against the minorities? And do you feel any change can or might come in the future?
I think the change can come if all the minorities of India and put together, they actually form half the population of India. Like, there are over 210 million Muslims. There are about 310 million Dalits. There are at least 40 million Christians and I think about 35 million Sikhs. All of them, they can actually combine and form a united political forum to beat the current government in India, because their salvation only lies in this. And unless they do that, I think it will be very, very difficult. And of course, they can continue their, first option of prayer, petition, and protest. But even that is not allowed. And if the collective political struggle or petitions and protests do not work, then I'm afraid, India will slowly but surely walk towards its second partition, which I think the West should understand. And, even the close friends of India, like Russia and the United States, they must come to take this and see, if that happens, then where would the security situation go? Particularly the fact that India, the nuclear weapons of India are now in the firm hands of the RSS, and they could actually create problems of such magnitudes which nobody will be able to control.
All right. Now, finally, Raza Muhammad Khan Saab, this state-sponsored terrorism that even the Indians call it, will it go unabated? Will incidents like these that have come to the fore now will continue to be, registered by India without any proper action taken whatsoever? Or do you feel a time will come, as you said, if this continues unabated, that we might see more, fissures inside of the Indian society that can lead to further detriment as far as India is concerned, and of course partitions, as you also used the word? Or do you feel that the Indian or the international community at one moment in time will maybe take concrete action against such activities?
Well, I think a lot will depend on the attitude of the United States, because as we are aware, the West is dominated by the United States. The United States, it is not only the government, it is also the people, of the United States, which needs to be made more aware of the predicaments of the Indian Muslims and Kashmiris. And I think Pakistani policies and the policies of the OIC can play a role in that. I think this awareness program in the United States and in the West through a program which needs to be properly funded. This initiative needs to be taken by the OIC, and I think that is the only way forward. That pressure could eventually be applied on the Indian government to seize whatever they are doing.
All right, thank you very much, Raza Muhammad Khan Saab, senior analyst, who have joined us, who have talked to us about this latest incident from Assam that comes to the forefront thanks to a video that has been shared on social media, and that shows the barbarities that are being perpetrated on the Muslim minority in India. I will end with this quote by Andalib Abbas, who is a Tehreek-e-Insaf feminist. She said, "Hindutva regime has gone sick with hatred, intolerance, bigotry and bitterness towards Muslims in India." Another proof that comes to the forefront. Let's hope, let's wish that the international community puts some kind of pressure so that India can come to its senses. Our second story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, is concerning the future of the Pakistan-US relationship in the whole context of the meeting between Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab and Antony Blinken. More in the following report.
Foreign policy and relations are neither static nor permanent, as the fluctuating tectonic plates of the world order periodically reorient the trajectory of partnerships. The mercurial Pak-US engagement has often been narrowly framed, dictated either by short-term security interests or the imperative to deal with a common challenge. As US withdrew from Afghanistan, both Islamabad and Washington, D.C. are cognizant of the ground realities that the relationship needs rejuvenation amid the new strategic calculus. In order to discuss the contours of US-Pak ties in New Afghanistan, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken met on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly with his counterpart from Pakistan, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. The U.S. State Department said that Blinken highlighted the importance of coordinating the diplomatic engagement and talks with Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. The Foreign Minister also assured Secretary Blinken that Pakistan is committed to facilitating the inclusive political settlement in Afghanistan. The meeting vividly underscored that Pakistan-U.S. partnership rests upon convergence of shared interests, such as the quest for peace and stability in the region. At a time when the world is gripped by unprecedented challenges of a truly global nature, there is pressing case to augment the scope of Pak-US bilateral ties. The recent developments in Afghanistan and Pakistan's unwavering efforts to ensure the smooth departure of US affirm the most allied ally credentials of Pakistan. Pak-US cooperation produced results, leading incumbent US President Biden to conclude earlier this year that the United States has achieved its core objective in Afghanistan.
Now, to discuss more on the gamut of relationship that exists between the US and Pakistan, we've been joined by Dr. Hussain Shaheed Soherwordi. He's a foreign affairs expert. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, who have joined us. Dr. Saab, how do you gauge the current status of the cooperation or the relationship between US and Pakistan, and do you feel that can change in the context of this meeting of between Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab and Anthony Blinken, and also the visit of Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab to New York? Do you feel Pakistan can convince the US to change its stance as far as its current relationship with our country is concerned?
I believe just after withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan, this is something at once that happened, that Pakistan and United States relations have taken a dip. I don't think this is the case. Afghanistan, Pakistan and United States, they were already at a disagreement with the situation prevailing in Afghanistan, and they both were quite at a distance of each other. So in terms of the process, I believe there was already a gap. There was a gray area between them, and they both were not looking at Afghanistan from same direction, from the same dimension. So that disagreement, that space between their thoughts already existed. But with this withdrawal, which at the end took place a bit swiftly, a bit quicker than what was anticipated, especially in the background of statements by Zalmay Khalilzad, one feels that there is a distastefulness in American policy corridors, and they are considering Pakistan as the one responsible for it. We need to autopsy that. I believe what happened yesterday between the meeting that took place between Secretary Blinken and the Pakistani Foreign Minister Qureshi, I believe they would soften attitude. They will work on working conclusively for seeing what in a collaborative manner can be done by both countries for Afghanistan are dealing with the Taliban phenomena that has come up again. But I must say that there are soft disagreements. At the moment, they have not come to the limelight that bluntly, but the forthcoming time is very important, I believe, between the two countries. And the reason is that Pakistan is looking at the rise of the Taliban as the ultimate end of what had been taking place in the last 1 year, and especially in the last 6 months. And Americans are looking at it as something that they were not anticipating. As I say once again, that even in American policy corridors, there are disagreements. Zalmay Khalilzad says that we had an agreement with the Taliban in the last few days before 15th of August that they Taliban won't enter before 6 months, and Anthony Blinken said that whatever took place at the end was not expected. So this means there are gaps between you and the
Soherwordi, despite these, as you said, soft disagreements as far as Afghanistan is concerned, and also these disagreements within the US power corridors as far as the situation that has emerged out of Afghanistan following the, of course, the takeover by the Afghan Taliban, do you feel there could be some kind of convergence of interests between Pakistan and the United States of America?
That is a very important and need of the time question that you just asked. I believe time will tell, especially this would be answered while observing.
Well, our connection with Dr. Soherwordi has been disconnected, but of course we'll try to get hold of him. Nevertheless, Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab met with Anthony Blinken. This was the first meeting between the two. Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab not only discussed Afghanistan, which was of course the core issue that was discussed between the two leaders, but also talk about the highlights as far as the human rights situation in Indian held Kashmir, the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. And Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab has also said that Pakistan is only a stable, wants only a stable and broad-based government in Afghanistan. Dr. Soherwordi, we were talking about convergence of interests between Pakistan and the United States of America, whether it be Afghanistan, whether it be counter-terrorism, whether it be clean energy or other issues. Do you feel there could be some kind of convergence despite the differences that have emerged because of the Afghan situation?
Yeah, I will look at with what I was already stating, and that is that where do they converge, America and Pakistan? I think that depends on what policy pronouncements will come from the Kabul under the Taliban. We will see how they will work. They will look at the governance, how those sensitive and areas will be dealt with that are of time importance for the world community. So if Pakistan is tilting towards recognizing Taliban along with neighboring certain other neighboring countries, onus of responsibility will be upon them, as had happened during 1996 to 2011 when Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and UAE had recognized. So I think that Americans, they are still following the same pattern of dealing with Pakistan, and that is looking at Pakistan through the prism of Afghanistan. They will see what happens in Afghanistan, and then they will deal with Pakistan. So I believe convergence and divergence will be depending on the way Taliban will move ahead.
All right. I'd refer to what Anthony Blinken told the press once he had met with Mahmoud Qureshi Saab. He said, I think there is a very strong unity of approach and unity of purpose. And of course, he was talking in respect with his talks with Mahmoud Qureshi Saab. Do you feel there's some kind of, this meeting between the two leaders has somehow, somewhere softened those areas of conflict between the two countries or those misunderstandings between the two countries? Do you feel there is a way forward somehow, somewhere?
This statement was very blunt, and me and you who are focusing on American foreign policy towards Afghanistan and Pakistan, it's a sigh of relief that some kind of convergence has popped up, especially in the background of this statement. One thing. Second thing, we have to understand that those countries who would recognize Taliban are who have in the beginning de jure or then afterwards de facto recognition of the regime. They would be a window towards this regime, and Americans will be dealing with the Taliban via Pakistan then. So I believe they would not shut this window, because then dealing with the Taliban, Americans will have only one option, and that would be Islamabad. So they would definitely keep the option open and will try their levels best to remain at least towards Afghanistan very open with Pakistan.
All right, I'd like to go a little bit in the past, Dr. Saab, and refer to a statement that was made by Anthony Blinken himself while he was addressing the House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee. He said with Pakistan, they had a multiplicity of interests with some that are in conflict with ours. Do you feel this statement will be more or less reversed after or maybe thawed after these talks, now that the US understands Pakistan's interests better following the meeting with Mahmoud Qureshi Saab?
Yeah, once again, I must appreciate a very important question that you have asked, because these are two diametrically opposite statements which have been given in the recent past. Let me be then blunter and let me say this thing, that it's too early to answer this question. Reason is that Americans at the moment are weighing the situation. They are also looking at how Pakistan is proceeding, how other neighboring countries are moving ahead. We also witnessed that there is a kind of an Eastern bloc that is emerging in shape of Iran, China, Russia, Pakistan, and Turkey, and they are in a way they are very supportive to Kabul regime, which is Taliban, and this thing is not something really conducive and acceptable to the US. Moreover, we also see that a kind of Cold War had already existed between China and United States. So Pakistan's role, what would be its role? that is also something to be noted. Just for this program, a couple of days back, I was in an international seminar where there were certain officials from State Department, and in a very cynic manner, one of them stated that, oh, it's good that we are out of Afghanistan because we are free now for Iran and the forthcoming Cold War with China. So one can understand that things are remapping themselves for this part of the world, because if they will be free from Afghanistan that fully, and they would be partially attached with that, there would be certain other commitments of United States in this region that would be in shape of Iran and China.
And finally, Dr. Soherwordi, in all of this situation that has emerged, and of course the meetings that kind of make both parties understand each other's perspective much better, do you feel statements or pressure tactics such as those from Democratic Representative Joaquin Castro, who want to ostracize Pakistan, want to remove it as a major non-NATO ally, do you feel that and others could be countered by the current US government? Do you feel there's an inclination by the current democratic government to kind of pursue cooperation with Pakistan?
Well, I have observed, I have studied it quite much in detail. This non-NATO ally status worked till 2007 and 8, but afterwards that was very dormant. So even if they lift it, I don't think that would be really something substantial for Pakistan. After 2008, it was already quite down the drain. Two things took place from 2007 and 8 afterwards till now, and they are taking place. And that is, one is Indo-US nuclear deal that was signed between the two countries, strategic deal, and that was, that ultimately Pakistan was the one that suffered because the strategic balance was very worstly affected in South Asia. And second is that drone attacks started from United States side. So and the third thing is the military support that Pakistan enjoyed under a coalition support fund that was already there. So even if Pakistan was not a non-NATO ally, still Pakistan had to get that. So I believe in terms of the process, even if they lift a non-NATO ally, it would just remove a kind of chip in the shoulder and nothing materially as far as support of United States to Pakistan is concerned.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hussain Shaheed Soherwordi, Foreign Affairs Analyst, to have talked to us about Pakistan-US relations in the context of Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab's visit to the US and his meeting with the Secretary of State Antony Blinken. We hope that the US understands Pakistan's perspective and moves forward and tries to forge a better collaboration and cooperation and better ties with Pakistan. Let's hope for a better future between the two states. And now let's go to our third story, and that concerns Pakistan and the OIC as far as the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Pakistan on Thursday has urged the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to enhance its efforts to facilitate a lasting solution to the current situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab, who is in the US, he was addressing a meeting of the OIC contact group in New York, and he said that the oppressed people of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region were now heavily reliant on the OIC and the Muslim Ummah for some kind of a solution. Let's hear what he had to say.
Since 5th of August 2019, over 8 million Kashmiris continue to face lockdown, military siege, arbitrary detentions, and unprecedented restrictions. Following the extremist Hindutva ideology, the RSS-BJP regime has also embarked on a design to change the demographic structure of the occupied territory and obliterate the distinct identity of the Kashmiri people.
Let's hope that the OIC listens to Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab and moves forward in translating all the different statements that it has come with to action as far as some kind of a pressure tactic on India, so that it lets the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir give their right to self-determination, let them decide what they want to do with this region that is the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we would end today's segment on a very sad note. Renowned actor Talat Iqbal has passed away in Dallas in the United States of America. He was a very popular television star from the 1970s and 1980s. Even his spouse, Sumbul, was a very well-known television actress. Now, he was, of course, going through a prolonged illness, and unfortunately, he met his maker and passed away in Dallas. He starred in many important television series after having gone through the gamut of Radio Pakistan. He has worked in with dramas such as Do Duni Panch, Aakhri Chatan, Ab Geene Kalfe Baharan, Karwan, and Ab Dekh Khuda Kya Karta Hai, as well as Shikaste Arzu. He is one person that remains part of those legends of Pakistan television who people will never forget, because at that time there was only one channel, that was Pakistan Television, and the content that was being produced under the auspices of Pakistan Television at that time in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s was above exceptional, and people still remember those serials today. Talat Iqbal Saab, you will sorely be missed by us in Pakistan. May your soul rest in eternal peace. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. This is the last show of the week, so we inshallah see you on Monday with new stories and segments that interest you, us, and Pakistan. We try to bring a change through this discussion. I hope you understand our perspective better through these different kind of formats of discussion that we have with our analysts. Till then, stay safe, follow the standard operating procedures, and get yourselves vaccinated if you haven't already. Allah Hafiz.